Hey everyone, welcome to another week of O Ship. I'm Freddie Laker. I'm your host. For those of you who haven't joined the show before, O Ship is a show where we feature entrepreneurs, leaders, executives, uh, generally thoughtful and creative people who've been around the block and have some great stories of success, but through those journeys of success also have some great stories about failure. And we like to call those O Ship moments. So we're going to hear a couple of those today because we have a very, very interesting guest on who, as usual, happens to be a good friend of mine as well. And that person is Brett Colbert. And he has had a very interesting career that you could argue is quite different and maybe even, I think to some people's perception, adversarial to maybe where I came from in my agency life, where he is a diehard procurement guy. So this guy, he's had procurement roles at AB InBev. He's had them at Nestle. He's had them at Warner Brothers. He was the chief procurement officer of MDC Group, the big agency holding company. He's founded his own company called the Rock Group. And I'm now very, very, very fortunate to say that he's actually part of Chameleon Collective. So today we're going to talk about something particularly interesting to me anyway, and I'm hoping it's to you as well. We're going to talk about the unattainable triangle. And so this is that kind of balance between, quality, price, and speed. Where do clients factor this in? What's the right balance of all these three things? So we've titled today's episode, The Unattainable Triangle, Can I Get a Cheaper Version of You? And with that, welcome to another episode of O Ship. And with that, we're back. Welcome, Brett. I'm glad you're here on the show.
Freddie, I miss you, man. I miss sushi. I miss sake. I miss gray hair in our beards. Listen,
man.
Come to New York, man, whenever you want, whenever you can. Be safe.
Yeah, I would kill to go to that sushi restaurant with you in New York again. That's one of those things that's hard to get in good sushi and delivery. Brutal.
They had to kick us out. We want to close the place down every time.
Yeah, I just noticed so, by the way. So normally when guests join, they've got their name and their title, or maybe their name and their company. What is, sorry, I've got my glass, CGSD?
Oh, I'm sorry. That was a title that was given to me years ago. That's Chief Get Shit Done. So if you think about it, when we are sitting where we are within companies, that's what we're asked to do, is get shit done.
I like that.
Amicably,
I like that. I mean, as a guy who's got a show called O Ship, I don't think I can have sensitive ears on that one. So yeah, fair enough. I like that. CGSD. Okay, I'll take that.
On a business card, no
less. For a second, I thought I read CGSTD, and I was like, Chief Get Sexually Transmitted. No, we don't want. Okay, we don't want that one. CGSD is much better. So look, I talked a little bit around your background, but I'm sure I didn't do it justice. Could you talk a little bit around your background and history and why people should listen to your opinion on some of the things we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Freddie, as you know, I'm a bit of a double agent. And what does that mean? So I started my career back then working in entertainment, working on the West Coast, working for studios, managing their media planning and buying for most of the major Hollywood studios. And I absolutely loved doing it as an agency guy. I was one of those agency guys that actually sat on site with the clients at the studios and working real time on trying to get butts and seats for movies. And did that for years and years. And I got called by another competing studio. And they said, listen, we know who you are. We know what you do. Would you be interested in doing it for us? And I said, absolutely. I love the culture of your company. You've got a great slate. Absolutely. But you're looking for someone with the title procurement. And I don't know what that is. I said, if you're looking for someone who understands how to manage investments and quantify value against those investments and managing agencies, then I'm your person. But it says that you're looking for someone who has an acronym CPM, and I'm not sure what that is. In my world, that's cost per thousand, and it's Certified Purchasing Manager. And
I didn't know that either.
I don't. Most people wouldn't know what that was, or who that is. But Freddie, at that point, I realized that everything that I was doing in my career and everything that I loved in terms of purchasing the world's largest commodity media, that's actually procurement. It's a lot of syllables for a title, but that's what I was doing. And I guess I adopted that title. Quickly, I realized that there was a perception against the word procurement, and oftentimes people call that purchasing. So I wanted to pivot that so quickly to something that was more reflective of what it is that we were doing, and that was strategic sourcing. When you think about it, is that the role of procurement is a service to the business, and it's allowing them to understand the investments that are made to grow top line at the companies. So what you're effectively doing is strategically sourcing partnerships to bring in people or vendors or companies that are going to make more money for the brands. And that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I actually do.
I have to ask, not trying to put anyone in an awkward spot or whatever, but what do you think people's perception of procurement is? Like, like without knowing it, I know from my agency life the certain way that we may have looked at it, but I'd love to hear what you think people think procurement is, or what people, the type of people that might be in procurement.
Absolutely. Listen, I was the Pied Piper, still arguably may be the bad boy of procurement, the face that went with procurement. Immediately cost cutting, immediately agency killer or vendor killer, budget killer. To be quite honest, 95% of procurement people don't touch a budget. They don't own a P&L, and they don't own a scope of work. I was fortunate in some of the jobs that I did that I owned the budget. And I was able to own the budget because I understood how much things cost. And I understood how much people should invest to get the results that we needed. So the business KPIs were aligned with the procurement KPIs, and those were cascaded to every single vendor or agency that we were working with. If we didn't share accountability or develop a meritocracy, then really all we were doing was working in vacuums and cycles. And that wasn't productive for the business. That wasn't productive for any of the agencies or people that I brought in. I'll tell you though, while I was doing it, you have a lot of power in your head, and you think that, you could actually influence the decision and influence the spend. And the reality at the end of the day is understanding what your role is within the organization. Is oftentimes I would say that the stakeholder or the brand owns the relationship, and you as the sourcing person, you own the task. And once you understand your role within the equation, then you can get partners to work effectively together.
Yeah, I have to just be on. And again, you and I always have a very open relationship, and now I'm having an open relationship with a live stream with a whole bunch of people watching, and that's fun too. And I would say that I feel like when my perception before I had a chance to work with you, and before I think I got a little further along in my career. Was that, to your point, I had an agency, and it was like procurement was our nemesis. We'd be like, we got them to buy an amazing idea, and we just thought, now here we go, we're going to get grinded down, or we're going to get shoved some rotten terms, or whatever. But I also feel like where they do get that kind of sometimes that negative rap. As a marketer, if you can have a strong collaborative relationship with your procurement partner within the brand side. So once I started doing CMO roles, for example, or chief digital officer roles, I learned really quickly that if I had an amazing partner in the procurement side of the business, that I was exponentially more successful. And I think maybe some of some of those negative perceptions I had were kind of blown away. Basically, I just don't think I understood the role.
Yeah, I mean, when we met, what did you think of me? Why did you have that negative perception in your head? What came out of my mouth that perhaps scared the shit out of you?
I mean, most of that was really just your personality. It had nothing to do with the procurement thing. No, I'm just kidding.
No, when we met, the company called me Mad Dog. I was measured on how bad I bit or I bite. But that's the thing. is that people never really asked
Yeah.
what it is that I needed, what it is the brand needed. The assumption was that you were going to get handed to me or handed to someone in my role, and we were going to talk about price.
Yeah.
And it was never talking about actually value. And it wasn't talking about outputs. Difficult to determine outcomes, but everything was assumed that it was going to be tied to an input, an hourly rate. And, sadly, still same conversation happens today, is
Mm-hmm.
that the relationship isn't established up front. And many times agencies or people like yourself aren't valued as a partner to the business. And they don't quite understand what is it that you're going to actually do for us?
Mm-hmm.
And how is that compared to what we currently have? There's a reason why brands go out to agencies or go out to consultants like us, is that they ask us to deliver something that they can't do themselves. It's a business problem that they're having. So we go in, and the question that we ask ourselves is that, what is it that you're looking to achieve? Great. And the marketer wants to invest more to get more. And the assumption is that the procurement person wants to spend less to get less.
Mm-hmm.
So at the top of the conversation, we focused on three things: quality, service, and low cost. What stays?
If you're a service provider today, whether you're a consultant, you're an agency, or you're just anyone who might be selling to a larger organization, what advice would you give people on how to value their work? Should they be doing hourly? Should they be doing project based work? What do you think?
You know my opinion on this. I've been saying this for decades, is never, ever, ever price on hourly rates. I mean, listen, we have this discussion internally at the collective. So here's my thoughts on hourly rates. So first and foremost, it misaligns interests, is that clients want more hours. We want more hours. Clients want to pay for less hours. Hourly rates don't focus on what clients really want, and that's results. If you bill on time and material or hourly, it penalizes the consultant or the vendor for being effective. That's actually a measurable KPI. So, Freddie, the faster you solve the business problem, the less you earn. And as a result, what happens? Innovation suffers. It never provides any useful information about the quality of work, the satisfaction of the clients, or the effectiveness that you're delivering. So that's why I always say focus on outputs, project-based deliverables. If you can measure an outcome, great, then focus on outcomes. But too often when you're brought into a situation, is that those outcomes have yet to be defined.
If anyone watching who's watching the live stream right now wants to comment on this, I would love to hear some other votes or input from people. But this is a debate that Brett and I have had a whole bunch of times. For me, smart way, if you're lucky, is to do project pricing, and you're billing on value. You're setting a price that the client likes, and that they feel good about, you feel good about, and you get the job done. And it doesn't really matter if you do it in an hour or 50 hours, because you maybe have invested over time to develop processes or systems or repeatable, paths to success that allow you to do something that's a great deal for you as a service provider and still a great outcome for the client. The problem I have is that I think in a vast majority of situations, clients are not able to clearly define what they want. They've got very, very loose idea. They're probably going to change what they want over the period of the engagement as they learn more and understand more data and assimilate more information. And then you get in these awkward spots where you're like having to, change, send people change orders and ask for more money, and or have, so if you've got a fixed price, it gets a little weird. And so sometimes I just feel like time and materials or hourly is easier. It doesn't provide all that upside you want, but at least if the clients don't have a really clear definition of what they want, then you can say, hey, look, well, then at least the one thing that we know we all understand is time, and you can at least pay me for my time. Is that fair, or is that you still think, hell no, no matter what, stay away from hourly?
It's still a hell no. Let me ask you a question. Is that we're all
I
within
love it.
professional services, and you and I are going to Agree to disagree on this always, and this is why we
I
love each
love it.
other.
No, you might.
So,
I think you might win me over. So
Freddie,
I
you go to
want to
the
hear it.
doctor and you ask your doctor, how much is your hourly rates? No, you go to the best doctor to fix whatever health problem you have, and you
Yeah.
hope that he or she fixes it as quickly as possible. You go to your lawyer, and your lawyer tells you what their hourly rate is, and you shit because you're like, there is no way I'm paying you $500 an hour. Can we do it based on project based? It's
Yeah.
no different than how brand consultants, marketing consultants, business consultants should solve for businesses. Is that
Mm,
too often we hand over our costs? And what happens when you hand over your cost? Client smells expensive. And that's going to continue to be the dialogue. And that's the last thing we want to focus on is how much do I cost as opposed to how much am I worth? And what is it that is going to deliver to your business? If you fix their business problem, that could be worth billions of dollars to them. Rather than that, why don't we figure out a way to put equity against that, measure out the equity and get the payouts? Oftentimes too difficult to do, but it's easy to implement time and material. Absolutely. But at the same token, is that time and material also allows clients to own your IP in less time and then just walk away. And the biggest challenge is what we're solving for is compliance to what it is that we put in place, and then measurement of continuous improvement post that. So it's of no benefit to a client to assume that they're going to pay an agency or a consultant on an hourly rate. Just today, and today's been a day for me, I got 2 calls from 2 different brands saying I'm in deep shit trouble. So what's the problem? It says procurement actually told me that I had to negotiate with my vendors on an hourly rate. And they forced me to work with the ones that agreed to their cost cutting. So effectively less than what they wanted to earn. And they under-delivered the scope and we ran out of money. And now I'm in trouble because I didn't get the deliverables that I was promised. What do I do?
hmm
And my first response is that, listen, it's going to cost you 5 to 7 times more to find a new agency versus retain the one that you have. But if you ask the agency what's in the best interest for them, because they're your partner, and collaborate on a solution that's going to be better moving forward. They said, can I do that? I said, it's your agency. Of course you can do that. Or what you can do is you can pause everything, have business interruption, and try to find a new agency. And it's going to take you 6 to 8 months to have them onboard a culture and understand your brand. Said, so what we should have focused on again is obtaining the best partner, the best value, and minimizing the conversation lowest cost.
Mm. It's very thoughtful and very. I'm like, that is a very thoughtful and caring procurement person who has a very sensitive approach to their agencies. I love
So
that. That's so nice.
check
So,
this out again. Procurement people were not focused on cost savings. I never was focused on cost savings. If
it's
you do
about
your job
value,
well,
finding the real value there for the
well,
business.
yeah. I mean, listen, brands cost businesses money. Agencies don't cost businesses money. Brands are terribly decentralized and they don't necessarily have a consistent process.
Mm,
They're also inundated with technology and process. If you can
mm,
simplify their process, it's going to simplify the way they work with third parties. As a result, total costs are going to go down. It's not a difficult equation. It's actually very easy to mitigate, is that you understand what's not working well based on being a subject matter expert. That's the thing, is that you have to understand what's happening within marketing. I always started within marketing and I was given this title of marketing procurement. It's because what I was doing, but then cascaded to all areas of procurement, indirect and direct procurement. But understanding how the investments are built, how they're approved, what we're looking to achieve, and then which vendors are going to best solve for that, cascading the same KPIs that the business has to the vendors and create that partnership.
mm.
It's really not that difficult, but no more posturing, no more positioning, no more playing games with cost. Just let people know how much money you have so then they can invest it wisely on your behalf. You're not the first person to say to them, can you be more efficient with the budget? But you're also not the first person to let them know that you're not the final decision maker. There's 17 other people that are going to weigh on the decision. And at the end of the day, you're not actually the decision maker or the champion. If you're up front in those conversations, you're going to mitigate costs.
Mm.
But people don't realize that too often. They assume that whom they're speaking to is the decision maker. They're the ones that are going to own the budget, and they're the ones going to measure your outputs or your delivery against the outputs, whether you
You know,
deliver value to the business or not.
I know you had put it mildly, an unusual path to this career path, but is there, if you look at like the standard profile, is there some more normal path? Like when you look at your colleagues and peers in the industry, most of them seem to have come up through a certain, whether educational background or former jobs? Like how does one go about this career path typically? And again, yours was seemed atypical.
Yeah, so there are degrees in supply chain management,
Yeah,
and I did not get a degree in supply chain management.
yeah,
I got a degree in being a shithead, and
yeah,
that's what I continued with. So there is absolutely formal accreditation, certifications,
yeah.
but it doesn't necessarily make you have good soft skills. And that's what this role is all about, is understanding human nature and be able to sell into your company the value that you bring. Because remember, procurement or sourcing, there are costs to the business. So if you're not adding value to the business, then there's no point in having you within the business. And then you have to actually sell the vendors on why you're going to be the best client for them. They don't have to work with you. The best people get to work with whomever they want. Well, if you're
Mm.
looking for the best people to join your company effectively, then you've got to sell to them and say that you're actually a really great client that's willing to invest everything they have to get the best results possible.
It's so funny. I'm thinking about some of the harder procurement experiences I've had in my life. And so some of them were like when I was doing a lot of work for Coca-Cola, back when Coca-Cola was like the coolest thing, to be doing, like the early 2000s, or even like companies like Unilever that I feel like beat you up so much. But I can't help but wonder in hindsight, and I've literally never thought about this until listening to you talk about this live. I can't help but wonder if, that was because so many people were trying to get in the door there that kind of made them kind of like, well, we're the hot girl in the room, or whatever you want to call it, and we're gonna kind of be arm's length and make it hard for people. But it's a great point. I never thought about like the sales side of procurement, because if you're an up and coming brand or an up and coming business and you're like, I want to work with the best people, and your procurement department, you're like, hey, get me the best people in here. You've got to convince some of these really great vendors that you're going to be an awesome client, or there's going to be great opportunities to do incredible work. And I never even thought about that side of it, the sales side of procurement. That's really interesting.
Well, think about this. So the hotshot companies, the Unilevers, the Coke, they know the cachet to their brand. And they know that if you want that logo, there's value to that. So
Hmm.
I'm not naming names in terms of which company, but I used to charge agencies hundreds of thousands of dollars to utilize the logo, knowing that they would be able to leverage it as a sales tactic. There
Wow.
is
I
value
actually
that
had
we
I've had
see.
people stop me from using the logo. I've never and it's true though. There's like, if you get a couple of those things up there and people are like, oh, I didn't know they work for,
I
whoever and
can't tell you
whoever. And
how many agencies would first and foremost say, well, we do business with Coke. So does every agency, apparently. Everyone does business with Coke. And they assume that if you're working with Coke, then not only are you working with the top marketers, but you understand a pretty vigorous process. So if you can
Mhm.
get past that process, you probably could get past our process.
Mhm.
But the reality is that Coke, they then would question the margins that all of their vendors had. And smart vendors would come back and say, I want the same margin that you make on your products. And the negotiation would get very contentious very quickly. There's a lot of things that are happening within today's procurement world that's removing the human emotion. And machine learning is actually doing quite a bit for that, not only taking a look at spend, but also commoditizing human beings. So you asked me about an oh ship moment. And here's one. Freddie, have you ever heard of reverse auctions?
I've heard of it, but I'm not super experienced in them.
So do you shop on eBay?
Yeah,
Yeah. So what happens on eBay is that you want a pair of shoes or you want a pair of glasses and you
yeah,
put in the bid, right?
yeah, exactly.
And someone drives the bid up and biggest bid wins, right?
Hmm.
Well, check this out. On reverse auctions, this is how this works. So I want to work with Freddie, I want to work with Adam, and I want to work with Brittany. And I set the price on what I think Freddie, Adam, and Brittany are worth. And then I do a reverse auction where I have the three of you compete against one another to drive your price down. and I stand back and watch.
But this is what happened on things like Upwork, and this is, people have heard me kind of rant about this for the last couple of years on Ship. I feel like the gig economy, which is obviously something I'm very passionate about, and bringing independent workers around. But I feel like the technologies out there, that the positive was to democratized access to talent. The downside was that it commoditized people and pushed people to potentially unsustainable and unlivable wages for this very reason, and that's not good for workers. And so all of a sudden, what looked like it was the future, could be the future work, started creating a pretty ugly futuristic work. It was very good for the employers, but not very good for the workers. Again, and something that I personally am trying really hard to fight against. So tell me more about the first auction in procurement, though. So you were going to share an ship moment, and I think I derailed you.
No, all good. So I, as you know, often work with agencies, and I'm a broker who works with other procurement people because I obviously created the game and I speak the language. So an agency of mine was invited to participate in an RFP with a billion-dollar technology brand. And first they went through chemistry meetings, and the chemistry meeting with the agency was fantastic. They loved the agency and they said, we're going to go ahead and input you into reverse auction. And I was with the agency on the phone, and we were talking to the head of global procurement at the company. And I said, well, we're not interested in participating in the reverse auction. And they said, well, no one's ever said no to us. And I said, well, what happens if we say no, knowing that nothing was going to ever happen? And they said, well, I guess nothing, but everyone else has agreed to do this. I said, I understand, but this is premature of us actually knowing what the assignment's going to be. We haven't seen a brief, and there clearly is an opportunity for the agency to put together a scope of work. We don't know what the deliverables are going to be. Is that you're just asking for a cost, independent of understanding what our outputs are going to be. So we're going to kindly decline the invitation for the reverse auction, but is that going to impact our ability to win business with you guys? And she said, well, no, I guess not. And here's where it gets ship. At that point, I said to her, fantastic, thank you for that response. Moving forward, I'd like to work with a more expensive version of you. And the agency CEO literally said to me, text, what the fuck did you just do? And I'm texting him back, hold on, I got this. He said, I'm sorry, what did you just say? I said, I'd like to work with a more expensive version of you. I said, why would you ever say that? Because a more expensive version of you would understand that you never want to commoditize talent. Is that you're a cash positive company and you're looking for the best innovation to drive more money into your company. So a more expensive version of you would understand that this is not actually going to deliver against your KPIs, the business KPIs, or drive value into the company. And she says, you're an asshole. And I said, well, and she goes, but you're an adorable asshole, and I know you for years, and I wouldn't expect anything coming out of your mouth. And the CEO texts me, goes, I cannot believe that just came out of your mouth. Long story short, agency won the business for $35 million.
Hell yeah. That's
Hell
awesome.
yeah is right. And that's the thing, Freddie, is that if you fall prey to their games, to my games, frankly, is that you're going to impact everybody that's being asked to quantify value. Mm-hmm. If there is a concern about cost, fine, let's transparently, I hate that word, but let's have a conversation about that. And what that means is that you're actually asking for stuff that you can't afford. So let's focus on what you need now. We'll solve the need, we'll measure the result, and then we'll get to the wants. But at any point, a company is not asking their CMO to take a rate reduction or to do 20% more for the same compensation. We don't work that way. Nobody should have to work that way because, as you said before, it's not sustainable. So if we're really trying to create sustainable partnerships, then we've got to reevaluate what's most important to us. And not only that, we've got to question the historic KPIs that were put upon us. If we're focused on bottom line, cut the budget. That's all. Right size the scope. It's not that difficult to have that conversation. Focus on what it is that we need. Focus on what it is that I need. And then we'll go ahead and come to an agreement on how to deliver against that based on an agreed upon time.
So look, you've worked with a ton of brands, big brands. You've worked with a ton of not just agencies, but frankly, all kinds of different service providers trying to work with these big brands. And so I feel like you have a pretty unique ability to, let's just say, take a look at the landscape like it is right now. So I'm going to ask you a couple very specific questions around basically the future of work that I would love to get your take on. So, I mentioned this a moment ago, the gig economy, the kind of rise of the independent worker. There's all these technologies creating accessibility to these different types of technology, or these different types of workforces. How are you, from your point of view, seeing bigger businesses or corporate America kind of reacting to these? It's like a new toy. Do they know how to play with them, in your opinion? Do they know how to interact with them? Obviously, we can't speak in absolutes, but is there kind of a general sense of how corporate America is doing with this so far?
Yeah, so there's a perception, there's a reality. So each one of the marketing teams has an experimentation checklist. Is that we want to be able to leverage all latest and greatest technology that's going to drive a better result. But at the end of the day, who has to manage implementation of that? Dun 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 dun, IT. And so there's this battle between workload and investments between marketing and IT. And that's the biggest challenge, is that too often finance and IT will come and say, you know what, we're not going to invest CapEx for another technology platform that we're not going to implement, or we have to be compliant to the ones that we currently have. So what that's doing, sadly, it's impacting innovation. So there's got to be a new way to get to a quicker POC to understand what's the best platform for you today. Because I feel like there's a new platform that comes out every 15 minutes. There's a new CMP that's going to be better for everybody. There's going to be a new ESP that's going to drive email conversion faster and more efficient than ever. There's yet another acronym that's going to come into this market amongst the 17,000 acronyms that we already have currently. So that's the thing.
So let me give it more specific then. So like when you think about, let's use I always pick on Upwork, but let's use Upwork as an example. Like, does or actually not even Upwork. Let's just take straight up all these independent contractors and freelancers. There's a huge chunk of the workforce being engaged in that way. Do you feel like big companies are adopting that more and they know how to interact with that? Or because like, for example, we run into certain companies that we work with at Collective, where I look at some of the paperwork and the insurance requirements and all the other stuff they need, and I'm like, there's no way your kind of everyday worker could cope or react to these kind of contracts. And it makes me feel like they're woefully underprepared. But other people I think are trying to explore how to engage with these folks. I just interested to see, like, specifically even through the eyes of procurement, like does procurement like, oh, I don't want to deal with all these thousands of indies on their own. Anything in more specifically in that kind of area that you're seeing?
Yeah, well, that touched us directly. Is that we had, for one client, had to carry cybersecurity insurance, which just isn't a requirement for a consultant.
Yeah.
So when
With
you go,
$500 coverage, if I remember correctly.
yeah, it was crazy, absolutely crazy. It said, listen, we're not touching data. We're building a capacity within the company.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, what we want to do is simplify process and understand what the changes are tied to the workplace. So I have contracts that are to be reflective of the work that's going to be currently done. So I have a one-page agreement for an IC, an independent contractor agreement, that is going to protect the company, but also protect the consultant. Because as you know, a W-9, 30, 40% less than a W-2. And if you're getting headcount reduction with your company, do it through a vendor spend and bring on a W-9. I say it all day long. There are many companies that are going in as a contingent leader or an interim leader. Contingent workforce is something that they've chosen to do. They've realized now more than ever that they can do it as effective, if not more effective, and they get to balance on where they want to work and play. So companies are changed in a way that they are requiring certain vendors to onboard. Believe it or not, Freddie, they're actually reevaluating payment terms for independent operators, says he, the king of payment terms. So they're making it more beneficial. And remember, you have to make it attractive to want to come to work for that company. I
Mm,
mean, listen, Freddie, you have transformed countless numbers of businesses. You have made more businesses more money than most people out there. It would only benefit them if they changed the way that they worked with someone like yourself to make it more attractive to join their company.
mm,
You've chosen that you want to do the work that you want to do, get in and get out and solve someone else's problem in the next couple of months.
mm.
Don't make it difficult to want to work there
Yeah,
and
yeah, especially
protect
today
you
when
when you get.
everyone needs the best talent they can get. Um,
That's what it nets to at the end of the day.
and so, well, I've got one more question for you, and it's again focused on the agency side of the business. People have been talking about the death of the agencies, or the models flawed and dying or whatever. Um, what do you think is, I don't believe any of that, not to put words in your mouth, but I think it's evolving and it's changing. And how do you think the role of the agents of agencies in general might change over the next kind of 10 years? Like, do you feel like the role is changing, or is that just my take on it?
No, the rule's absolutely changing. I mean,
Yeah.
listen, I left the holding company because I gave them everything that I could. And the opportunity I felt was for the independent entrepreneurs in the independent agencies and the ones that I absolutely loved that I never had the opportunity to work with. There's a reason why talent wants to go to an independent agency because it's a flat organization where they can go in and learn and everyone knows one another's name and everyone gets to work on really great clients. And what's happening is that they're getting shit done faster. There's less hierarchies, there's less process. They're reporting to people as opposed to report to Wall Street. They're independent, they're decision led, and they get shit done fast. So
Mm.
that's who's winning today, as opposed to some of the larger holding company networks or agency networks, frankly.
Hmm. Um, I couldn't agree more. So I've been saving this last question because you mentioned this in the pre-show kind of chat we had, and there's just no way I can't bring up something like this after disclosing to me that you may have been on a couple reality shows, including a couple dating shows, in what, the '90s or the 2000 or early 2000s. When did
Yeah,
this
because of
happen?
course my wife
I
is
have to
watching
ask you
this.
about this because I felt I got a tidbit, and you're like, "We're going live." I'm like, like, I need to hear
So
this.
those that know me know that I don't shy away from a camera. Any opportunity that I could get in front of a camera, I want it. So there was an open casting call in the 90s for an MTV show called Singled Out,
I
hosted
think I
by the
remember
one and
that one.
only
Is that the one
Jenny
with Jenny
McCarthy.
McCarthy?
So had the opportunity, why not? I talk my way into anything. I was telling Steph before the call that, when you think about procurement, it's buying stuff. I would go into the Gap in Coconut Grove in Florida, and I pick something off the rack for $7.99. $7.99. And I go up to the register and say, hey, do you have friends and family discount? And they would look at me like I was insane. And they said, well, yeah, we do. I said, great, I'd like to be your friend. So I got 35% off of $7.99. But anyway, back to Jenny McCarthy. So I went, I flirted my way onto the show. I got onto the show. And I was telling Stephanie that this show was about answering questions in advance of being on the show. So we got the opportunity to potentially win a date with a beautiful person. And sadly, the first question that I threw out was, when you think about your perfect size of a guy, what size of, there you go, we got the video. What size guy would
Please,
you like?
please tell me they're talking about height.
Talking about heights. Yes, height. Sorry, Freddie. Yes,
Just
height. 5'10" or above. Well, you know me, I'm 5'6". So I was rolled out almost immediately. No love for short guys.
I forgot about that host guy too. That's too funny. Classic '90s haircut that guy was rocking. That's
So I'm a
funny. Well,
procurement badass and a reality show whore.
I love that. I think you're a very lucky man that I had not learned that further before the show, because I'm pretty confident even if I had to order the episode off the internet, like, and pay for like a season to get it, I probably would have done that. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to still do that at this point,
Next
because
town hall.
I would get a big kick out of seeing '90s Brett on a dating show.
Freddie, I wish that our audience could just see what happens at our holiday parties. Epic. The stuff that you pull out.
Anyone who's watching the show for a while knows, as a man with no hair, I'm completely obsessed with other people's hair. What was your '90s haircut, Brett? Did you have like the not longer '90s cut?
So speaking of the Gap, I actually worked for the Gap in the 90s, and I had my head turned to a customer behind, and she said, "Excuse me, miss." And I turned around. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were a man. You have
We're gonna
Dorothy
have to
Hamill
find that
hair.
clip now.
Do you remember Dorothy Hamill, the skater with the bob?
Yeah. That's what you had. You had the Dorothy Hamill skater bob. Nice.
Oh,
that's an image that's going to be burned into my memory until I find that video, of course.
I
Well,
know,
I
exactly.
don't think we could find a better way to end those ship than sharing that story. So thank you for that. I will cherish this memory. Thank you so much for joining us, Brett. It was really, really great to have you on the show. You're always entertaining, and I knew you'd bring some fun and some really insightful thinking today. And you have a very different kind of background that I hope our audience, whether they're watching live or watching, after the show, over the next couple weeks, we'll see people tuning in across YouTube. We'll see them coming in through LinkedIn. We'll see them coming in through Facebook. And I just want to thank all of those people who've been watching. The best thing you can do to support the show is give us a like or share the video or tell a friend. This is just something we do for love and passion, and we love just sharing any insights we can with any aspiring or already achieved leaders or successful folks out there. It's nice to know that no one in this world is perfect, and we can all learn something along the way, even when we have some pretty big oh shit moments. So Brett, thanks again, and thanks again everyone for tuning into Oh Ship.
Bye guys.